You think Valentine's Day is commercial now? All that pressure, all that money, all those expectations. You think that's bad? Wait until you hear what Romans were doing on February 14th. Naked men running through the streets whipping women with strips of freshly cut goat hide. Wine everywhere. The whole city drunk and screaming. Women lining up, willingly, eagerly, to be struck by these strips because they believed it would make them fertile. 3 days of chaos, sacrifice and ritual and raw celebration all tangled together in a festival so primal, so intense, so unlike anything we'd recognize today that it makes your terrible Valentine's Day dinner reservation look like a church picnic. That was Lupercalia. And it had absolutely nothing to do with love letters. So how did we get from that to heart-shaped boxes of chocolate? How did strips of goat hide become Hallmark cards? How did a drunken fertility riot become the most commercialized romantic holiday on the planet? February 14th, 269 CE. A Roman priest named Valentine is dragged to his execution. That's the story anyway. The one they tell you in elementary school, wrapped in red construction paper and glitter glue. The martyred saint who defied the emperor to marry young lovers in secret. Romantic, right? Tragic and beautiful and perfect for a greeting card. Except here's the problem. It probably never happened. Valentine, Saint Valentine, patron of love and romance, might not have existed at all. Or maybe he did exist, but there were 3 of him. Or 5. The historical record is a mess of contradictory legends, forged documents, and medieval fan fiction passed off as fact. The Catholic Church itself can't decide which Valentine we're celebrating, or why, or if any of it matters. But forget the saint for a second. Because the real story, the one nobody tells you, starts way before Christianity, way before any martyred priest in pagan Rome with a festival so shocking that the Church spent centuries trying to erase it from history. Lupercalia, February 13th through 15th. A fertility festival dedicated to Lupercus, the wolf god, protector against evil spirits. Tied to the myth of Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of Rome, supposedly raised by a she-wolf in a cave called the Lupercalia. The ritual designed to honour her, to channel her protection, to purify the city and make the people fertile. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't pretty, and it sure as hell wasn't about love. This is what people were actually doing in February while the Roman Empire stood at its height. Not writing love poems, not giving gifts to express tender affection. They were participating in a fertility ritual so intense, so physical, so tied to ancient magic that modern people can barely process it. And here's the thing, Lupercalia wasn't even on February 14th. It was February 13th through 15th. Valentine's Day, the date, the specific calendar square we now associate with romance, had nothing to do with Lupercalia originally. They were separate. Lupercalia was the big festival. February 14th was just another day in the Roman calendar. So where does Valentine come in? How does a saint's feast day, a day of fasting and prayer and martyrdom, become the most romantic day of the year? How does the Church take a fertility festival and turn it into something about love? That's the journey we're on. The complete, unfiltered, stranger-than-fiction history of Valentine's Day. From pagan rituals the Church tried to erase, to medieval poets who invented romance out of thin air, to Victorian entrepreneurs who turned love into a product you could buy, to modern corporations who engineered the whole performance we now call romance. This isn't the story they taught you in school. This is the story of how love became a commodity, how human emotion got weaponized for profit, and how a saint who probably never existed became the mascot for a $25 billion industry. You're about to see the full arc. The shocking beginning, the deliberate cover-up, the accidental invention, the corporate takeover, and the modern machine we're all living inside whether we like it or not. By the end of this, you'll never look at a box of chocolates the same way again. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this, do me a favour, hit that like button, drop a comment, let me know where you are in the world, what time it is for you right now. This community stretches across every time zone, every continent, and you're all part of it. Your presence matters. Now settle in, get comfortable, adjust your pillows, find that perfect spot where your body can just sink into the surface beneath you. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop. Because what comes next? The Church's plan to erase Lupercalia, the invention of Saint Valentine out of thin air, the medieval poet who accidentally created modern romance. That's where this story gets really interesting. Close your eyes if you want. Let the story carry you. We've got a long journey ahead, and you're safe here. Just listen. Drift. Let it unfold. Let's go back, way back, to Rome before Christianity, before emperors converted and cathedrals rose. To Rome when the old gods still ruled, when every natural force had a deity, when rituals tied directly to survival and fear, and the desperate human need to control what couldn't be controlled. February was the month of purification in the Roman calendar. Februa, the purification festivals. The air was cold, winter still gripping the city, but spring was coming. Seeds needed to be planted, babies needed to be born. The cycle had to continue. And the Romans, practical as they were superstitious, believed that certain rituals could tip the scales, could convince the gods to bless them with fertility, to protect them from wolves and evil spirits, to ensure the city's survival for another year. Lupercalia was one of those rituals, ancient even by Roman standards. Nobody really knew where it started. The best guess tied it to Romulus and Remus, the legendary twin founders of Rome. The story goes that they were abandoned as infants, left to die on the banks of the Tiber River, but a she-wolf found them, nursed them, raised them in a cave on the Palatine Hill, a cave called the Lupercal. The wolf mother saved the founders of Rome, and so wolves became sacred. Lupercus, the wolf god, became the protector. And every February the Romans honoured that protection. The Luperci were the priests of Lupercus, young men, usually from prominent families. Being chosen as a Luperci was an honour, a sign of status. On February 15th, they would gather at the Lupercal cave. The ritual began with sacrifice. Goats, always goats, because goats represented fertility, and a dog, because dogs were purifiers, protectors against evil. The animals were brought to the altar, sacrificed, the offerings made to Lupercus and the old gods who still held power in the city's collective mind. But the sacrifice wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The Luperci would take strips of hide from the goats, fresh, still warm. They'd strip down. Accounts vary on exactly how naked they got, but most sources agree they wore almost nothing, maybe just a loincloth fashioned from the goat skins, and they'd run. Out of the cave, down the Palatine Hill, through the streets of Rome, whips in hand, strips of goat hide swinging. And as they ran, they struck anyone in their path, mostly women. Women who positioned themselves deliberately along the route. Women who held out their hands, turned their backs, offered themselves to be struck. Because the belief was ironclad. Being hit by the Luperci's strips brought fertility. If you were trying to conceive, you sought them out. If you were already pregnant, you believed it would protect your child, ease your labour. The strips carried the magic of the sacrifice, the blessing of Lupercus, the power of the ritual itself. This wasn't gentle. The Luperci ran hard, struck with force. The strips left marks, but the women didn't flinch. They believed. And in a world where childbirth could kill you, where infant mortality was staggering, where a barren woman could be divorced and shamed, that belief was everything. The whole city participated. Not just the Luperci and the women. Everyone came out to watch. The streets filled with crowds. Wine flowed freely. February in Rome was cold, but the festival burned hot. Bodies moving, voices rising, the energy of the crowd building as the Luperci ran their route. It was spectacle and religion and release all tangled together. A citywide acknowledgement that fertility mattered, that survival depended on children, that the gods needed to be appeased. And it worked. Not because the strips had actual magic, though the Romans believed they did, but because ritual creates meaning. gives structure to chaos, offers the illusion of control in a world where so much is beyond human power. Lupercalia let the Romans do something, take action, participate in their own fate, even if that fate was ultimately up to forces they couldn't see or understand. The festival lasted 3 days, February 13th through 15th, 3 days of sacrifice and running and striking and drinking and noise. By the time it ended, everyone was exhausted, purified, they believed, protected, ready for spring. Lupercalia wasn't unique to February 15th, though that was the climax. The whole period was steeped in purification rituals in attempts to cleanse the city and prepare for the new growing season. The Romans took this seriously. February was about endings and beginnings, about shedding the old year and making space for the new. Lupercalia was the most dramatic expression of that, the most visceral, the one that involved the most physical participation. And here's what's important. Lupercalia had nothing to do with romantic love. Nothing. It was about fertility, yes. About reproduction, about making babies, about ensuring the survival of families in the city itself. But it wasn't about affection or tenderness or choosing a partner. It wasn't about love letters or courtship or expressing devotion. It was functional, practical, a ritual designed to solve a problem. The Romans didn't celebrate romantic love the way we do. They had words for different kinds of love. Amor for passionate desire, caritas for familial affection, pietas for duty and respect. But the idea of romantic love as the foundation for marriage, as something worth celebrating in its own right, wasn't really part of their world. Marriage was political, economic, a transaction between families. Love might happen, but it wasn't required, wasn't the point. So when you hear people say Valentine's Day has its roots in Lupercalia, that's only half true. The date might overlap. February 14th sits right in the middle of Lupercalia's 3-day span, but the purpose is completely different. Lupercalia was about fertility and purification. Valentine's Day, whenever it actually became about romance, was about something else entirely. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because before Valentine's Day could become about romance, Christianity had to take over Rome, and once Christianity took over, Lupercalia had to go. The Roman Empire converted slowly. Constantine's conversion in 312 CE is usually marked as the turning point, but it took decades for Christianity to really dominate. Old gods didn't disappear overnight. Temples stayed open. Rituals continued. People hedged their bets, honouring both Christ and Jupiter just in case. The transition was messy, uneven, full of compromise and resistance. But by the late 400s, the church had consolidated power, and the church had a problem: pagan festivals. Everywhere the church looked, there were holdovers from the old religions: Saturnalia in December, Floralia in spring, Lupercalia in February. These festivals were popular. People loved them. They were fun, communal, woven into the fabric of daily life. You couldn't just ban them and expect people to comply. So the church got smart. Instead of banning pagan festivals outright, they replaced them, covered them up, built Christian holidays on top of pagan dates, hoping people would gradually forget the original meaning and accept the new one. Saturnalia became Christmas. Spring fertility festivals became Easter. And Lupercalia? Lupercalia became Saint Valentine's Day. Or at least that's the theory. In 496 CE, Pope Gelasius I officially declared February 14th as the Feast of Saint Valentine. The stated purpose was to honour a Christian martyr. The unstated purpose was to give people something else to do in mid-February, something that didn't involve running through the streets whipping each other with goat hide. But here's where it gets weird. Here's where the whole story starts to fall apart if you look too closely. Who was Saint Valentine? Nobody knows. Not really. The historical record is a disaster. There are at least 3 different Valentines who might be the Valentine. Maybe more. The legends contradict each other. The details don't line up. and the Catholic Church itself, when pressed, admits that Valentine's identity is murky at best. One Valentine was supposedly a priest in Rome during the reign of Emperor Claudius II in the 200 CE. The story goes that Claudius banned marriages for young men because he believed single soldiers fought better than married ones. Valentine defied the emperor and performed secret marriages for young lovers. When Claudius found out, Valentine was arrested, imprisoned, and eventually executed on February 14th, 269 CE. Romantic, right? Defying tyranny for love. Dying a martyr's death because he believed in the sanctity of marriage. Perfect origin story for the patron saint of romance. Except there's no solid evidence this happened. No contemporary accounts. No records of Claudius banning marriage. The story shows up in writing centuries after the supposed events, at a time when the church was actively trying to create saints to replace pagan gods. It reads like fiction. Because it probably is. Another Valentine was a bishop in Terni, a town about 60 miles from Rome. He was also martyred, also on February 14th, also in the 200 CE. But his story has nothing to do with romance or marriage. He was just a Christian leader who got executed during one of Rome's periodic purges of Christians. No secret weddings, no defiance of imperial marriage bans, just martyrdom. Some scholars think these two Valentines are actually the same person, that the priest in Rome and the bishop in Terni are the same guy, and the stories got confused over time. Other scholars think there were multiple Valentines, maybe even 5 or more, all martyred around the same time, and the church just lumped them together into one figure because it was easier to remember one St. Valentine than to keep track of several. The Catholic Church's official position? In 1969, the Church removed St. Valentine from the general Roman calendar because his historical existence couldn't be verified. He's still technically a saint. You can still pray to him, still celebrate his feast day if you want, but the Church doesn't officially require it anymore because they don't know if he was real. So Pope Gelasius I in 496 CE declared February 14th the feast of St. Valentine. But Valentine might not have existed, and even if he did, there's no evidence he had anything to do with romantic love. The feast day was just that, a feast day. A day to honour a martyr, a day of prayer and fasting and maybe going to church, the same as dozens of other saints' feast days scattered throughout the year. St. Valentine's Day in 496 CE looked nothing like Valentine's Day today. No cards, no gifts, no romance, just solemn religious observance and maybe a break from the pagan fertility festival that used to dominate this time of year. Did it work? Did declaring St. Valentine's Day actually stop people from celebrating Lupercalia? Sort of. Eventually. But it took centuries. Lupercalia didn't disappear overnight. Pope Gelasius might have banned it officially, but people kept doing it anyway, just more quietly, in modified forms. Old habits die hard. Festivals rooted in centuries of tradition don't vanish because a pope says so. But slowly, over generations, Lupercalia faded. Christianity became more entrenched. The old gods lost their power. The rituals stopped making sense to people raised in a Christian world. By the Middle Ages, most people in Europe had no idea Lupercalia had ever existed. The Church had successfully erased it from collective memory. And February 14th? For nearly 1,000 years, it was just another saint's day. Unremarkable, unmemorable, nothing to do with love. Until a poet changed everything. Geoffrey Chaucer, English poet, court insider, born around 1340, died 1400. Best known for the Canterbury Tales, a collection of stories told by pilgrims travelling to Canterbury Cathedral. Chaucer was a big deal in his time, well-connected, well-travelled, fluent in French and Italian, plugged into the cultural currents flowing through medieval Europe. He wrote for the royal court. His audience was aristocrats, nobles, people with time and money and a taste for elaborate entertainment. In 1382, Chaucer wrote a poem called Parlement of Fools, the Parliament of Birds. It was written for the court of King Richard II, possibly to commemorate Richard's engagement to Anne of Bohemia. The poem is an allegory. Birds gather on Saint Valentine's Day to choose their mates. Nature presides. Each bird makes its case. There's debate, competition, romantic tension. It's all very courtly, very stylized, very much the kind of thing medieval aristocrats ate up. And buried in the poem is this line, "For this was on Saint Valentine's Day, when every bird cometh there to choose his mate." That's it. That's the line that invented Valentine's Day as we know it. Before Chaucer, St. Valentine's Day had nothing to do with romance. After Chaucer it did, because Chaucer said so, because he tied the date to mate selection, to choosing a partner, to love. And because Chaucer was influential, because his audience was powerful, because medieval court culture loved this kind of romantic game, the idea stuck. Within a few decades, Valentine's Day was associated with romance in aristocratic circles. Nobles started exchanging love notes on February 14th. Women and men played elaborate courtship games. The day became a socially acceptable opportunity to express affection, to flirt, to engage in the ritualized performance of romantic love that medieval courts perfected. But here's the thing, this was only among the wealthy, the aristocracy, the people who had time for courtly love games and the education to write poetry and the resources to commission fancy tokens of affection. Common people, peasants, labourers, merchants didn't participate, they didn't care. February 14th was still just another day in winter. Courtly love was a whole cultural phenomenon in medieval Europe. It started in southern France in the 11th century, spread through aristocratic courts, became the foundation for countless poems, songs and stories. The basic idea, romantic love is noble, uplifting, worth pursuing for its own sake. Knights devoted themselves to ladies. Ladies inspired knights to acts of bravery and virtue. Love was idealized, often unfulfilled, always dramatic. It was also completely divorced from marriage. Courtly love was usually about desiring someone you couldn't have, someone else's wife, a lady above your station, a person forbidden to you. The longing was the point. The impossibility made it romantic. Marriage was still political, still economic, still about alliances and heirs. But courtly love? That was about feelings. Chaucer's audience understood this. They lived it. So when Chaucer tied St. Valentine's Day to choosing a mate, they immediately grasped the implication. This is a day for courtly love, for expressing desire, for playing the game. And the game caught on. By the 1400s, Valentine's Day love notes were a thing among the aristocracy, not widespread, not formalized, but recognized. People knew that February 14th was the day you might receive a love poem, a token, a declaration of affection from someone trying to court you. The oldest surviving Valentine is from 1415. Charles, Duke of Orleans, was imprisoned in the Tower of London after being captured at the Battle of Agincourt. Locked up, separated from his wife, he wrote her a poem. He called it a Valentine. It's sweet, melancholy, full of longing. I am already sick of love, my very gentle Valentine. He wrote it because Valentine's Day was by then understood as a day for love, letters. Chaucer had planted the seed 30 years earlier, and it had grown into a recognisable tradition, at least among people like Charles, educated, wealthy, connected to court culture. But again, this was elite culture, a tiny percentage of the population. The vast majority of people in medieval Europe had no idea Valentine's Day was supposed to be romantic. They were too busy surviving, working the fields, trying not to starve. Courtly love was a luxury they couldn't afford. So Valentine's Day existed in this weird dual state for centuries. Among aristocrats, it was a day for romantic games, for exchanging verses, for elaborate displays of affection. Among everyone else, it was nothing. Just another day in February. That duality would last until the 1800s, until technology changed everything, until the cost of expressing affection dropped low enough that ordinary people could participate, until entrepreneurs realized they could sell romance. But before we get there, let's sit with what Chaucer did. because it's kind of remarkable. Chaucer took a saint's feast day, one of hundreds littering the medieval calendar, and repurposed it. He didn't ask permission, didn't get approval from the church. He just wrote a poem, tied the date to mate selection, and because he had the right audience and the right cultural moment, it worked. The association stuck. This is how culture evolves, not through official decrees, but through influential people making creative choices that resonate with their audiences. Chaucer couldn't have predicted that his throwaway line about birds choosing mates would still matter 600 years later. He was just writing a poem for a royal engagement. But the idea was sticky. The timing was right. Courtly love culture was hungry for rituals, for occasions, for structures to hang romantic games on, and Chaucer gave them one. Saint Valentine, whoever he was, had nothing to do with this. The martyred priest or bishop or whoever got executed in Rome in the 200s wasn't thinking about love letters, wasn't trying to inspire courtship rituals. He was just a Christian who died for his faith. The church honoured him with a feast day, and then, 1,000 years later, a poet used that date for his own creative purposes. That's how Valentine's Day became about romance, not because of ancient tradition, not because of pagan fertility festivals, not because of a saint who defied emperors for love, because a medieval poet made it up. And people like the idea enough to keep it going. For the next 400 years, Valentine's Day stayed niche, a quirky aristocratic tradition. Nobles exchanged handwritten verses. Wealthy families commissioned elaborate valentines, handmade, one of a kind, often featuring intricate cut paper designs, ribbons, watercolours, pressed flowers. They were art pieces, status symbols, proof that you had time and money and taste. Ordinary people occasionally heard about Valentine's Day, maybe, knew it was a thing the rich did, but they didn't participate, couldn't participate. Creating a valentine required skill, materials, leisure time. It required literacy. In a world where most people couldn't read or write, where paper was expensive, where every day was consumed by labour, Valentine's Day might as well have been happening on another planet. But then came the 1800s, and everything changed. The Industrial Revolution didn't just transform manufacturing, it transformed communication. Paper production exploded. Printing presses got faster, cheaper, more sophisticated. Literacy rates climbed. And in 1840, Britain introduced the penny post, a flat-rate postage system that made sending mail affordable for ordinary people. Before the penny post, mailing a letter cost as much as a day's wages for a working-class person. After the penny post, it cost a penny. 1 penny to send a letter anywhere in Britain. Suddenly communication wasn't a luxury anymore. It was accessible, and entrepreneurs immediately saw the opportunity. Valentine's cards, pre-printed, illustrated, ready to send, hit the market almost instantly. By the mid-1840s, you could walk into a stationer's shop and buy a valentine. No artistic skill required. No need to compose your own verse. Someone else had done the work. All you had to do was pick one, sign it, and mail it. The cards were beautiful, ornate. Victorians loved decoration, and valentine manufacturers delivered. Lace paper, embossing, gold leaf, hand-tinted illustrations, die-cut designs that unfolded into 3-dimensional scenes. Some cards had hidden compartments. Pull a tab and a bouquet of paper flowers would spring up. Lift a flap and a secret message appeared. They were intricate, labour-intensive, designed to impress, and they sold. By the 1850s, over 60,000 Valentine cards were being sold annually in London alone. The number kept climbing. By the 1870s, hundreds of thousands. By the 1880s, millions. Valentines. The day went from an aristocratic novelty to a mass cultural phenomenon in less than 50 years. Why did it explode so fast? A few reasons. First, people wanted it. The idea of a day dedicated to expressing affection resonated. Courtship in Victorian England was stiff, formal, heavily regulated. You couldn't just tell someone you liked them. You needed reasons, intermediaries, socially acceptable channels. Valentine's Day provided one. Sending a valentine wasn't scandalous, it was expected. It gave people permission to flirt, to express interest, to participate in romance without breaking social rules. Second, the cards made it easy. You didn't need to be a poet, didn't need to know how to draw or paint. You just needed to pick a card that matched what you wanted to say. The verse was already written, the design was already done. All you contributed was the signature and the postage. Third, it was affordable. A nice valentine cost a few pennies. Not free, but within reach for most working-class people. For the first time, romance wasn't exclusive to the wealthy. A factory worker could send his sweetheart a valentine. A shop girl could receive one. The democratization of affection. And fourth, the Victorians loved sentiment. They loved emotion, ritual, performance. Victorian culture was obsessed with feelings, expressing them, containing them, codifying them. Mourning rituals were elaborate. Etiquette books dictated exactly how to behave in every social situation. And romance? Romance was one of the most important arenas for performing emotion correctly. Valentine's Day fit perfectly into that world. It was structured, predictable, safe. It let people express feelings within acceptable boundaries. The Valentine card industry became huge. Entire factories dedicated to producing them. Artists and writers churned out designs and verses. Some cards were mass-produced, cheap, sold in bulk. Others were expensive, luxurious, targeted at wealthier buyers. The market, segmented. You could spend a penny or a pound, depending on what you wanted to communicate and who you were trying to impress. The cards themselves varied wildly. Some were sweet, innocent, covered in flowers and cherubs and declarations of eternal love. Others were funny, ironic, playing with the conventions of romance. And then there were the vinegar valentines. Vinegar valentines were insult cards. Mean, nasty, designed to humiliate the recipient. They featured ugly illustrations, caricatures of people with exaggerated flaws, and cruel verses mocking everything from appearance to occupation to personality. To a Flirt showed a woman surrounded by men, with a verse about her loose morals. To a Drunkard featured a man passed out in a gutter. To an Old Maid was exactly as unkind as you'd expect. And people sent these, a lot. Vinegar valentines were hugely popular, because Valentine's Day wasn't just about love, it was also about rejection, mockery, social control. If someone was bothering you, if you wanted to put them in their place, you sent them a vinegar valentine, anonymously usually. Let them open it and see themselves insulted in print. It was cruel, it was petty, it was very Victorian. The same culture that idealized love and sentiment also had a vicious streak, a need to enforce social hierarchies, to punish anyone who stepped out of line. Vinegar valentines were the dark side of the Valentine card boom, proof that commercialized romance wasn't all sweetness and light. But most valentines were genuine. People sent them to express affection, to court someone, to maintain relationships. The cards became part of courtship rituals. If a man was interested in a woman, he sent her a valentine. If she responded positively, maybe sent one back, maybe acknowledged it in person, that was a signal. Courtship could proceed. If she ignored it, that was also a signal. The valentine became a low-stakes way to test interest, to communicate feelings without the risk of direct rejection. Victorian courtship was all about signals. Everything was coded. Women couldn't be direct. Men couldn't be too forward. You had to read between the lines, interpret gestures, understand what wasn't being said. Valentine's cards fit perfectly into that system. They said what you couldn't say out loud. They gave you plausible deniability if things went wrong. Oh, I was just sending a friendly valentine, nothing serious. But they also created expectations. If you were courting someone, you were expected to send a valentine. If you didn't, that was noticed, judged. By the 1880s, Valentine's Day had become obligatory for anyone in a romantic relationship. You couldn't skip it. Skipping it meant you didn't care, didn't value the relationship, weren't serious. That's the shift. Valentine's Day went from optional aristocratic game to mandatory working class expectation. And that shift happened because of capitalism. Because entrepreneurs saw a market and exploited it. Because factories could produce cards fast and cheap enough to make them accessible. Because the post office made distribution easy. Because Victorian culture was hungry for rituals that gave structure to the chaos of human emotion. The Valentine card was a product, but it was also a cultural technology, a tool for navigating courtship, for expressing feelings, for participating in the shared performance of romance. It succeeded because it solved problems, made things easier, gave people a script to follow, and once the script existed, it became self-reinforcing. You sent a Valentine because everyone else sent Valentines, because not sending one marked you as cold, unromantic, failing at the basic requirements of courtship. The tradition became tradition because it was tradition. The card companies didn't need to keep explaining why you should buy Valentines. You already knew. Everyone knew. By 1900, Valentine's Day was firmly established in Britain, America, parts of Europe. It was popular, commercial, expected. The card industry was massive, and other industries were starting to pay attention. Chocolate, for example. Richard Cadbury, son of the founder of Cadbury Chocolate Company, was a marketing genius. In the 1860s, he started producing chocolate in heart-shaped boxes. Not just any boxes, beautiful boxes, ornate, decorated with flowers and cupids and romantic scenes. Boxes you'd keep after the chocolate was gone. Boxes that became keepsakes. The link between chocolate and romance wasn't obvious. Chocolate was a luxury, but not specifically a romantic one. But Cadbury saw the opportunity. Valentine's Day was huge. People were buying cards. Why not also buy chocolate? He designed the packaging to appeal to romantic sentiment, priced it as a special occasion gift, and marketed it hard around Valentine's Day. It worked. By the late 1800s, giving chocolate on Valentine's Day was a thing. Not universal yet, but growing. Cadbury's heart-shaped boxes became iconic. Other chocolate companies copied the idea. The association between chocolate and love solidified. This is important. Valentine's Day started with cards, but it didn't stop there. Once the day was established as commercial, other products attached themselves to it. Flowers, jewelry, candy, anything that could be marketed as romantic, as a gift, as proof of affection. The holiday became a platform, a date on the calendar where industries could launch products and expect people to buy them. And people did buy them. Because by now, Valentine's Day wasn't just tradition, it was obligation. If you loved someone, you proved it. With cards, with chocolate, with flowers. The performance of love required props, required spending, required participation in the commercial system that had grown up around February 14th. Victorian Valentine's Day set the template. Everything we recognise today, the cards, the gifts, the expectations, the pressure, the commercialisation, started then. The 1900s would expand it, amplify it, export it globally. But the Victorian era invented it. From Chaucer's poem to a $25 billion industry in 500 years. Not bad for a made-up tradition based on a saint who probably didn't exist. The 20th century turned Valentine's Day into a machine, not a tradition, not a cultural practice, a machine. A system designed to extract money from human emotion on an annual basis. And the machine builders, the greeting card companies, the chocolate manufacturers, the florists, the jewellers, they knew exactly what they were doing. The Victorian era proved the concept, showed that romance could be commercialised, that people would pay for products that helped them perform love. The 20th century industrialised that insight, scaled it up, made it systematic, turned February 14th into one of the most profitable days on the retail calendar. Let's start with greeting cards, because greeting cards became the foundation of everything else. Hallmark Cards was founded in 1910 by Joyce Hall in Kansas City, Missouri. Hall started small, selling postcards out of a shoebox. But he understood something fundamental about American culture in the early 1900s. People were moving to cities, leaving behind extended families, losing the tight community bonds that rural life provided. They were lonely, disconnected, and they wanted ways to maintain relationships across distance. Hall saw greeting cards as the solution, not just for Valentine's Day, for every occasion. Birthdays, holidays, sympathy, get well soon, thank you, congratulations. He created cards for every possible emotional moment, gave people pre-written sentiments they could send to express feelings they didn't know how to express themselves. Valentine's Day became one of Hallmark's biggest focuses. The company invested heavily in designing beautiful cards, hiring artists and writers, creating distinctive styles that people recognized and trusted. By the 1920s, Hallmark was producing millions of Valentine's cards annually. By the 1930s, they dominated the market. And Hallmark didn't just sell cards. They sold the idea that you needed cards, that expressing love required a card, that forgetting to send a Valentine's Day card meant you'd failed at romance. Their advertising was brilliant, emotional, guilt-inducing, effective. They showed disappointed women, embarrassed men, relationships in jeopardy because someone forgot Valentine's Day. The message was clear. Buy our cards, or suffer the consequences. It worked. By the 1940s, Valentine's Day card giving was near universal in America. If you were in a relationship, you sent a card. Period. Not sending one was unthinkable. The social pressure was enormous, and Hallmark benefited from every single card sold. But Hallmark had competition. American Greetings, founded in 1906, grew into a major rival. Gibson Greetings joined the market in the 1850s, but expanded massively in the early 1900s. These companies fought for market share, for shelf space, for consumer attention, and their competition drove innovation. Better designs, funnier verses, more elaborate cards, pop-up features, musical cards that played songs when you opened them, anything to stand out, to justify higher prices, to convince people that this card was the one that would perfectly express their feelings. The card companies also expanded beyond romantic love. They created cards for kids to exchange at school. Classroom Valentines became a thing in the 1920s and 1930s, cheap, simple cards that children gave to classmates. This served two purposes. First, it got kids involved in Valentine's Day early, training them to participate in the ritual. Second, it expanded the market. Now parents had to buy cards not just for their spouses, but for their children to distribute. More cards sold, more profit. The Great Depression hit in 1929, and you'd think Valentine's Day. Sales would collapse. Luxury spending tends to drop when people can't afford food. But Valentine's Day held up surprisingly well. Not at pre-depression levels, but better than expected. Why? Because people still wanted to express affection, still wanted moments of joy and connection in the middle of economic devastation. A card cost a few cents, affordable enough that most people could justify the expense. The card companies marketed heavily on this angle. Show you care, even in hard times. And it worked. World War II brought different challenges: paper rationing, printing restrictions, millions of men overseas, separated from sweethearts and wives. But Valentine's Day adapted. Cards became smaller, simpler. Companies focused on send a Valentine to your soldier campaigns. Women bought cards to mail to men in Europe and the Pacific. The day became about maintaining connection across impossible distances, about hope and longing and the promise of reunion. After the war, Valentine's Day exploded. The 1950s economic boom meant people had disposable income again. Soldiers came home, got married, started families, and the card companies, the chocolate manufacturers, the florists, they all ramped up production. Valentine's Day became bigger than ever, and that's when the really aggressive marketing started. The 1950s were the golden age of American advertising. Television brought commercials into every living room, magazines ran glossy ads, radio spots played constantly, And the companies behind Valentine's Day, Hallmark, Hershey's, FTD, Florist's Transworld Delivery, Russell Stover, they all advertised relentlessly. The ads followed a pattern: show a happy couple, show the man giving a gift, show the woman's delighted reaction, imply that this card, this chocolate, these flowers, is what love looks like. If you're not doing this, you're not doing love right. If your partner isn't giving you this, maybe they don't really love you. It was emotional manipulation. Sophisticated, effective emotional manipulation. The ads didn't say, buy our product. They said, prove you're a good partner. They said, don't disappoint the person you love. They created anxiety, then offered the product as the solution. And it worked. Valentine's Day spending climbed year after year. By the 1960s, the day was enormous. Cards, chocolate, flowers, jewellery, all of it expected, all of it mandatory if you wanted to be a good romantic partner. Chocolate deserves special attention, because chocolate became so deeply associated with Valentine's Day that most people can't imagine the holiday without it. Cadbury started it in the 1860s with heart-shaped boxes, but American companies took it further. Hershey's, Russell Stover, Whitman's. They all created special Valentine's Day products. Heart-shaped boxes became ubiquitous. The boxes themselves were often more expensive than the chocolate inside. Satin, velvet, elaborate decorations. They were meant to be kept, displayed, treasured. Proof that someone loved you enough to buy you fancy chocolate. The chocolate companies ran aggressive campaigns. They positioned chocolate as an essential Valentine's gift. Not optional, essential. If a man didn't give his wife or girlfriend chocolate on Valentine's Day, he was failing. The ads made this explicit. They showed disappointed women, apologetic men scrambling to make it right. The message, don't be that guy. Buy chocolate. And men bought chocolate. Billions of dollars worth. Every February, chocolate sales spiked. The chocolate companies made a huge percentage of their annual revenue in the 2 weeks leading up to Valentine's Day. It became a phenomenon analysed by economists, studied by business schools. Valentine's Day was a case study in creating demand, in manufacturing necessity where none existed before. Flowers followed the same pattern, roses especially. Red roses became the flower of Valentine's Day through sheer marketing force. Florists pushed roses, advertisers showed men giving roses, movies and TV shows depicted romantic scenes featuring roses, and gradually roses became mandatory. The price of roses around Valentine's Day is obscene. Supply and demand, sure, but also pure exploitation. Florists know you'll pay, because if you show up on February 14th without roses, you failed, so they charge triple, quadruple what they charge any other time of year, and people pay. Because the alternative, not having roses on Valentine's Day, is unacceptable. FTD, Florist's Transworld Delivery, became a massive player in this. Founded in 1910, FTD created a network that let people order flowers from anywhere and have them delivered anywhere. By the 1950s, they were running national ad campaigns pushing flower giving for Valentine's Day. They standardized arrangements, created expectations about what a Valentine's bouquet should look like, and convinced millions of people that flowers were as essential as cards. Then came diamonds, De Beers, the Diamond Cartel, one of the most successful marketing campaigns in history. In 1947, De Beers hired an advertising agency to increase demand for diamonds. At the time, diamonds were luxury items but not culturally mandatory. Engagement rings existed, but they weren't universal. People got engaged without diamonds all the time. The agency created a slogan: "A diamond is forever." 4 words, simple, elegant, devastatingly effective. The campaign tied diamonds to eternal love, to commitment, to the idea that if you really love someone, you proved it with a diamond, specifically an engagement ring, and not just any ring, a diamond ring worth at least 2 months' salary. That 2 months' salary guideline, pure marketing invention. De Beers made it up, but they promoted it so heavily, so consistently, that it became accepted wisdom. By the 1960s, diamond engagement rings were expected. By the 1980s, they were nearly universal in America. And Valentine's Day became a secondary diamond-giving occasion, not as big as proposals, but significant. Men gave diamond jewellery, earrings, necklaces, bracelets on Valentine's Day to show serious commitment. The pressure was immense. De Beers didn't just sell diamonds. They sold the idea that love has a price tag, that affection can be measured in carats, that if you're not spending enough, you're not loving enough. It was cynical, calculated, and wildly profitable. All of these industries, greeting cards, chocolate, flowers, diamonds, operated in parallel, reinforcing each other. Their advertising overlapped, their messaging aligned. They all pushed the same basic idea. Valentine's Day is when you prove your love, and proving your love requires spending money. The cumulative effect was a holiday that felt ancient, traditional, inevitable, but it wasn't. It was engineered. Piece by piece, product by product, ad campaign by ad campaign. The traditions we think of as timeless, giving roses, buying chocolate hearts, presenting diamond jewellery, they're all less than a century old. Some are less than 50 years old, and they're not traditions in any meaningful sense. They're marketing successes that became cultural norms because enough people participated that not participating felt weird, deviant, wrong. Think about that. Corporations invented the rules of modern romance. They decided what I love you looks like on February 14th, and we all agreed. Not because we wanted to, but because opting out meant social consequences, judgment, disappointment, the implication that you didn't really care. The genius of the system is that it's self-perpetuating. Once everyone's doing it, you have to do it too. Once the expectations are set, they're nearly impossible to break. You can be cynical about Valentine's Day. You can see through the commercialization. You can know, intellectually, that it's all manufactured. But if your partner expects a card and chocolate and flowers, you're probably buying a card and chocolate and flowers. Because relationships require compromise. Because fighting Valentine's Day feels petty. Because sometimes it's easier to participate than to resist, and the companies know this. They've built an entire industry on knowing this. By the 1970s and 1980s, Valentine's Day spending was massive. Billions of dollars annually in the United States alone. The holiday had spread internationally. Canada, UK, parts of Europe, Australia. Anywhere American culture had influence, Valentine's Day followed, and everywhere it went, the same pattern repeated. Initial novelty, gradual adoption, eventual obligation. Japan adopted Valentine's Day in the 1950s, but with a twist. In Japan, women give chocolate to men, not the other way around. There are two types: Honmei chocolate for romantic partners and Giri chocolate for colleagues and friends. Giri chocolate is obligatory. Women are expected to give it to male, co-workers, bosses, acquaintances. It's not romantic, it's social obligation. The chocolate companies love it. They sell chocolate to women who aren't even celebrating romance. Pure manufactured demand. Japan also invented White Day, March 14th, 1 month after Valentine's Day. On White Day, men who receive chocolate on Valentine's Day are expected to give gifts back. Usually white chocolate, cookies, jewellery. The reciprocal obligation doubles the commercial opportunity. 2 gift-giving holidays instead of 1. South Korea took it further. They have Valentine's Day, February 14th, White Day, March 14th, and Black Day, April 14th. Black Day is for single people. If you didn't give or receive anything on Valentine's or White Day, you go out on Black Day, eat black noodles, and commiserate with other single people. It's simultaneously a celebration and a reminder of what you're missing. And yes, restaurants and food companies market heavily around it. The expansion of Valentine's Day into Asia is a case study in cultural imperialism through commerce. The day had no roots in these cultures, no historical connection. But corporations, often Western corporations, Sometimes local companies copying Western models imported it, sold it, made it stick. And now millions of people participate in a tradition that was invented on another continent for reasons that have nothing to do with their own cultural values. The environmental cost alone is staggering. Roses are grown in South America, flown thousands of miles, sold at inflated prices, and thrown away a week later. The carbon footprint of Valentine's Day is enormous. Chocolate production involves deforestation, exploitative labour practices, and massive energy consumption. The greeting card industry cuts down forests to produce paper that gets glanced at once and tossed in a drawer. And yet people keep participating, because the alternative, being the person who refuses to celebrate Valentine's Day, carries social costs that feel higher than the financial costs of participating. That's the trap. That's the machine. It's self-sustaining. It doesn't need aggressive marketing anymore, though the marketing continues. It just needs momentum. It needs everyone to keep doing what they've been doing, and most people do, because fighting it feels harder than going along. By the 1990s and 2000s, Valentine's Day had reached peak saturation. There was nowhere left to expand. Everyone knew about it. Everyone participated or deliberately didn't participate. The day was fully established. But the spending kept climbing, not because more people joined in, but because the expectations kept escalating. Cards weren't enough. Chocolate wasn't enough. Flowers weren't enough. You needed all of it. Plus dinner at a nice restaurant, plus maybe jewellery, plus experiences, weekend getaways, spa days, concert tickets. The bar kept rising. Restaurants started offering Valentine's Day prefix, menus, special menus with limited options and inflated prices. You couldn't order normally. You had to pay for the Valentine's experience. And because everyone was trying to go out on the same night, restaurants could charge whatever they wanted. People would pay. Because not taking your partner out on Valentine's Day? Unthinkable. The restaurant markup is predatory. The same meal that cost $40 on February 13th costs $90 on February 14th. The food is identical. The service is identical. The only difference is the date. But restaurants know they can get away with it, because people feel obligated to go out, to make the night special, to prove they care. And if you try to avoid it, suggest celebrating on February 13th or 15th instead, when prices are normal, you're the bad guy. You're cheap. You're unromantic. You don't understand. Your partner deserves to be celebrated on the actual day, not some substitute day that doesn't count. That's the power of the machine. It doesn't just create expectations, it creates emotional stakes. Opting out isn't just saving money, it's risking your relationship, disappointing someone you love, failing a test you didn't know you were taking but are absolutely being graded on. The rise of social media made it worse. Now, Valentine's Day isn't just about what you do. It's about what you're seen doing. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everyone posts about their Valentine's Day. The gifts they received, the romantic gestures, the perfect moments. And if you're not posting, people notice. If your partner doesn't post about you, what does that mean? Are you not worth posting about? Is the relationship not serious? The performative aspect of Valentine's Day reached new heights. It wasn't enough to celebrate privately. You had to celebrate publicly, had to prove to your social network that you were loved, valued, worthy. The companies adapted immediately. They started selling Instagram-worthy products. Giant teddy bears, elaborate flower arrangements designed to photograph well, chocolate displays that looked impressive on camera. They weren't selling romance anymore. They were selling content, giving people the tools to perform love for an audience. And people bought them. Because the performance matters now. Because love that isn't documented and shared feels somehow incomplete. Because we've become so accustomed to curating our lives for public consumption that even intimacy has to be broadcast. This is where we are now. Valentine's Day as a multi-billion-dollar industry, as a cultural requirement, as a performance, as a source of stress and anxiety and pressure, as something people simultaneously love and hate. participate in and resent, embrace and critique. The corporations won. They took a made-up Saint's Day, turned it into a romantic tradition through a medieval poet's invention, commercialized it in the Victorian era, and then weaponized it in the 20th century, and now it's self-sustaining, a machine that runs on obligation and emotional manipulation and the fear of being inadequate. But here's the thing, underneath all the commercialization, underneath all the pressure and marketing and manufactured expectations, there's still something real. People do want to express affection, do want moments to celebrate love, do want rituals that mark relationships as important. Valentine's Day hijacked that desire, commercialized it, turned it into a transaction. But the desire itself, the human need for connection, for meaning, for love, that's real. That predates Hallmark and De Beers and FTD. That goes back to the Romans, to medieval poets, to every human culture that's ever tried to make sense of love. The tragedy isn't that Valentine's Day exists. It's that something genuine got twisted into something so commercial that it's hard to see the genuine part anymore. Hard to separate the real desire to show someone you care from the manufactured obligation to prove it with products. And yet people still try, still send cards that mean something, still give gifts chosen with thought, still create moments of real connection on February 14th, even though they know they're participating in a system designed to extract money from emotion. That's worth something. The fact that real feeling persists even inside a commercial machine. That people still manage to express authentic love despite being manipulated into doing it on a specific date in a specific way with specific products. But let's not pretend the machine isn't there. Let's not pretend Valentine's Day is just a tradition. It's not. It's an industry. A conspiracy, if you want to be dramatic about it. A coordinated effort by multiple corporations across multiple industries to create artificial demand for unnecessary products, and then convince you that buying those products is how you prove love. And it worked. Better than anyone could have predicted. Saint Valentine. Whoever he was would be baffled. Chaucer would be amused. The Victorians who invented Valentine cards would recognise the mechanism but not the scale. And the Romans celebrating Lupercalia, whipping each other with goat strips, drunk and screaming in February, they wouldn't even know what we're talking about. We went from blood rituals to greeting cards, from fertility magic to chocolate hearts, from community celebration to private transaction, from genuine mystery to manufactured sentiment. That's the story. That's how Valentine's Day happened. Not through tradition, through invention, commercialization, and relentless marketing. Through corporations recognizing that human emotion is profitable and building an industry around it. And now here we are, living inside that industry, participating whether we want to or not, because the machine is bigger than any individual, because opting out is harder than going along, because sometimes it's easier to buy the card and the chocolate and the flowers than to explain why you're not. $25 billion. That's how much Americans spend on Valentine's Day every year. $25 billion for cards, chocolate, flowers, jewelry, dinners, gifts, experiences. One day, one date on the calendar. More than the GDP of some countries. Let that sink in for a second. We're spending the economic output of a small nation on a holiday that didn't exist in its current form until the Victorian era. A holiday that has nothing to do with the saint it's named after. A holiday invented by poets and commercialized by corporations. And it's not just America. Valentine's Day is global now. Canada, UK, Australia, much of Europe, parts of Asia, Latin America. Anywhere Western culture has reached, Valentine's Day has followed. The spending varies by country, but the pattern is the same. February 14th is now recognized worldwide as the day you prove love through purchasing. How did it get this big? How did a commercial holiday become more culturally powerful than most religious holidays? Simple. Repetition. Consistency. Ubiquity. Every year, starting in January, the Valentine's Day marketing begins. Store displays change. Red and pink everywhere. Hearts, cupids, roses, TV commercials, social media ads, email promotions. You can't escape it. And the marketing has gotten sophisticated, targeted, personalized. The algorithm knows your relationship status, knows what you've bought before, knows what your partner likes, and it serves you ads accordingly. She'll love this necklace. Don't forget, Valentine's Day is in 2 weeks. Make this year special. The pressure is constant, and it's designed to create anxiety, because anxiety drives purchases. If you're comfortable, confident, secure in your relationship, you might skip Valentine's Day, might celebrate in your own way, on your own terms. But if you're anxious, worried that your partner will be disappointed, worried that you're not doing enough, worried that everyone else is doing more, you'll buy, you'll participate, you'll conform. The companies know this. They've spent decades studying consumer behavior, testing messages, refining strategies. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push. They know that guilt works, that fear of inadequacy works, that social comparison works, and they push those buttons every February. Jewelry ads are particularly bad. They show men surprising women with diamond earrings, necklaces, rings. The women's reactions are always over-the-top joy, tears, gratitude. The implication is clear. This is what love looks like. If your partner isn't giving you jewelry, maybe they don't love you this much. If you're not giving jewelry, maybe you're not living up to expectations. It's manipulation, emotional manipulation for profit, and it's legal, accepted, normal. This is just how marketing works, but that doesn't make it less harmful, doesn't make the pressure less real. The restaurant industry participates too. Valentine's Day is one of the busiest nights of the year for restaurants, and they capitalize on it. Prefix menus with inflated prices, limited reservations that book up weeks in advance. If you want to take your partner out on Valentine's Day, you're paying premium prices for the privilege, and if you don't take them out, if you suggest cooking at home or going out a different night, you're cheap, unromantic, not trying hard enough. The social expectation is so strong that even people who hate crowded restaurants, who hate overpriced meals, who would rather celebrate any other way, even they make reservations, because not doing it feels worse than doing it. The expectations extend to proposals. Valentine's Day has become one of the most common days for marriage proposals, which makes sense, sort of. It's already a romantic day. The mood is set. But it also means that if you're in a long-term relationship and your partner is expecting a proposal, Valentine's Day becomes a deadline, a test. Propose on Valentine's Day or explain why you didn't. The pressure on men, and it's usually men because gender roles are alive and well in Valentine's Day culture, is enormous. You're supposed to plan the perfect day, get the perfect gift, make the perfect reservation, be romantic but not cliché, be generous but not show-offy. Express love in a way that satisfies your partner's expectations while also feeling authentic and personal. It's an impossible standard, but it's the standard. And men who fail to meet it, who forget, who don't try hard enough, who get it wrong, face real consequences. Disappointment, anger, relationship strain. Because Valentine's Day isn't just a day anymore, it's a test of the relationship itself, a measure of how much you care. Women face different pressure. The pressure to be grateful, to be impressed, to perform delight regardless of whether you actually like what you received. The pressure to post about it, to show the world that you're loved, that your partner came through. The pressure to not seem too demanding, but also to have standards, to appreciate the gesture while also hoping for jewelry or flowers or something significant enough to prove you matter. And for single people, Valentine's Day is a reminder of what they don't have. Everywhere they look, stores, social media, conversations at work, everyone is talking about Valentine's plans, about what they're doing, what they're getting, what they're giving. And if you're single, you're on the outside, not participating, not celebrated. There's been pushback. Galentine's Day, popularized by the TV show Parks and Recreation, encourages women to celebrate with female friends on February 13th. Singles Awareness Day tries to reclaim February 14th as a day for self-love, for celebrating independence. Anti-Valentine's parties, cynical campaigns about how the holiday is fake and commercial, but the pushback is still framed by Valentine's Day, still reacting to it. Even rejecting Valentine's Day requires acknowledging it, organising around it, defining yourself in opposition to it. The holiday is so dominant that you can't ignore it. You have to take a position, celebrate or reject, participate or opt out. Either way, you're engaging with it, and the companies don't care whether you love Valentine's Day or hate it. They care that you're thinking about it, talking about it, because attention drives sales. Even cynical, this holiday is stupid purchases, buying yourself chocolate because you're single, sending an ironic card to a friend, still count as purchases, still feed the machine. The environmental cost is staggering and mostly invisible. Roses grown in Ecuador or Kenya, flown to the United States and Europe, kept refrigerated, sold at markup, dead in a week. The carbon footprint is massive. The water usage is massive. The chemical pesticides used in rose cultivation damage ecosystems and poison workers. Chocolate production is similarly brutal. Cacao farms, many using exploitative labour, clear rainforest to plant more crops. The chocolate industry has been linked to child labour, to trafficking, to horrific working conditions. But on Valentine's Day, we don't think about that. We think about heart-shaped boxes and romantic gestures. The distance between the product and its origins is so vast that the connection never registers. Greeting cards mean cutting down trees, pulping wood, printing with ink, shipping across continents, for something that gets glanced at and tossed in a drawer. The waste is absurd, but it's normalized, expected, and the emotional cost, the anxiety, the pressure, the disappointment when reality doesn't match expectations, that's harder to quantify, but it's real. Therapists see an uptick in relationship stress around Valentine's Day. Couples fight about expectations not being met, about money spent or not spent, about the gap between what was wanted and what was given. Some relationships end because of Valentine's Day, not directly maybe, but the day can expose cracks, reveal mismatched expectations, highlight incompatibilities. If one person thinks Valentine's Day is essential and the other thinks it's stupid, that's not just about a day. That's about values, about how you navigate social pressure, about what you prioritize. And sometimes those differences are irreconcilable. Valentine's Day has also expanded. It's not just for couples anymore. Elementary schools have Valentine's Day parties where kids exchange cards with every classmate. Parents buy boxes of cheap cards, cartoon characters, superheroes, princesses, and their kids sign them and hand them out. It's adorable. It's also training. Getting kids accustomed to Valentine's Day rituals, to the idea that February 14th is special, that you express affection through purchased items. The card companies know this. They market heavily to parents, create products designed for children, hook them young. By the time those kids are adults, Valentine's Day will feel inevitable, natural, just something you do. Pets have been pulled into it too. Valentine's Day gifts for dogs and cats, special treats, toys, accessories. Because why not? If people will spend money on Valentine's gifts for their pets, companies will sell those products. The holiday expands to fill every available emotional space. Every relationship, no matter how non-romantic, becomes an opportunity for commerce. The pandemic added another layer. In 2020 and 2021, with lockdowns and restrictions, Valentine's Day looked different. Restaurants were closed or limited. People couldn't gather. But the spending didn't stop. It shifted. Online purchases surged. Delivery services boomed. Companies pivoted to quarantine Valentine's Day marketing. Send a gift to show you care from a distance. Order a meal kit for a romantic dinner at home. Buy an experience gift for later, when restrictions lift. The machine adapted, found new ways to extract spending even when the traditional mechanisms weren't available. Because that's what machines do. They adjust, they optimize, they survive. Now, in 2026, Valentine's Day is bigger than ever. The spending has recovered from pandemic dips and climbed higher. New products, new trends, new ways to participate, subscription boxes for couples, personalized jewelry with coordinates of where you met, experience gifts, hot air balloon rides, cooking classes, weekend getaways. The options are endless. The creativity in monetizing romance is impressive, if deeply cynical. And people keep buying, keep participating. Because at this point, Valentine's Day isn't just a holiday. It's infrastructure. It's built into the culture so deeply that removing it would leave a hole. What would February 14th be without Valentine's Day? Just another day. And after decades of being told it's special, being told it matters, being told that love is performed on this day in these specific ways, after all that, just another day feels like loss. That's the ultimate victory of the machine. It convinced us that we need it, that Valentine's Day serves a purpose, that without it, we'd lose something important. When the truth is, love existed before Valentine's Day. Romance existed before greeting cards and chocolate hearts. People expressed affection, chose partners, built relationships for thousands of years without needing Hallmark to tell them how. But now it feels essential. Now opting out feels deviant. Now the commercialized performance of love on February 14th has become synonymous with love itself. And that's the tragedy. That something real, human connection, affection, intimacy, got so thoroughly colonized by commerce that we can barely remember what it looked like before. The machine runs on autopilot now. It doesn't need aggressive marketing anymore, though it still gets it. It just needs momentum, needs people to keep doing what they've been doing, and most people do, because it's easier, because the social cost of opting out feels higher than the financial cost of participating, because sometimes you just don't want to fight, don't want to explain, don't want to be the person who ruins Valentine's Day. So you buy the card, you buy the chocolate, you make the reservation, you post the picture, you perform the ritual, and the machine keeps running. $25 billion a year. That's the cost of modern love. At least that's the cost on February 14th. So here we are at the end of this journey. From ancient Rome to modern America. From goat strips to greeting cards. From Lupercalia to Hallmark. From fertility rituals that had nothing to do with love to a commercial holiday that claims to be all about love. What have we learned? What does this history tell us? First, that Valentine's Day is invented, not ancient, not traditional in any meaningful sense. Invented by a medieval poet, commercialized by Victorian entrepreneurs, weaponized by 20th century corporations. Every element that feels essential, natural, obvious, it's all constructed, recent, deliberate. The Romans celebrating Lupercalia in February weren't thinking about romantic love. They were thinking about fertility, survival, appeasing gods who might otherwise let them starve. The Church declaring Saint Valentine's Day in 496 CE wasn't creating a romantic holiday. They were trying to erase pagan rituals and replace them with Christian observance. Chaucer writing about birds choosing mates on Saint Valentine's Day wasn't trying to commercialize romance. He was entertaining aristocrats with a clever poem. Each step along the way, people were solving immediate problems, pursuing immediate goals, with no idea their choices would compound into a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's how culture evolves. Not through grand plans, but through incremental decisions that happen to resonate, happen to stick, happen to get picked up and amplified by the right people at the right time. But once those decisions accumulated enough momentum, once enough people participated that the pattern became self-reinforcing, it stopped being random. It became systematic. Corporations saw the pattern and exploited it, recognized that human emotion is profitable and built industries around it. That's not inherently evil. Commerce isn't evil. Creating products people want, marketing effectively, building successful businesses, none of that is wrong. But there's something uncomfortable about how thoroughly Valentine's Day commercialized love. How completely the performance of affection got tied to purchasing. How difficult it became to express love outside the prescribed channels without feeling like you're doing it wrong. Because here's the truth. You don't need Valentine's Day to love someone. You don't need cards or chocolate or flowers or jewelry or expensive dinners. Those things can be nice, can be meaningful, but they're not love. They're products, tools at best. And love existed long before those tools will exist long after. The Romans knew this, in their way. Lupercalia wasn't about love, but the intensity of the ritual, the communal participation, the shared belief that they were doing something that mattered, that created connection. Not romantic connection, but human connection. Belonging. The feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. Medieval aristocrats playing courtly love games knew it too. The elaborate verses, the tokens exchanged, the ritualized flirtation, that was performance, but the emotions underneath were real. The desire to connect, to be seen, to matter to someone else. The performance was just the vehicle, the scaffolding around feelings that existed independent of the structure. The Victorians who bought Valentine cards and sent them to sweethearts, some of them were just following trends, sure, doing what everyone else did, but some of them meant it. Chose cards carefully, signed them sincerely, felt genuine affection for the recipients. The commercial mechanism didn't negate the real emotion, it just channeled it. And today, people spending hundreds of dollars on Valentine's Day, most of them aren't just mindless consumers. They're trying to express something real, trying to show someone they care, trying to create moments of joy and connection in the middle of ordinary life. The fact that they're doing it through commercial products doesn't automatically make the gesture meaningless, but it does complicate it, because it's hard to separate the authentic impulse to show love from the manufactured obligation to prove love. Hard to know if you're buying chocolate because you want to, or because you'll be judged if you don't. Hard to tell if your partner is delighted by the roses because they genuinely love roses, or because roses are what you're supposed to give and receiving them confirms they're valued. The machine has made everything suspect, every gesture potentially tainted by commerce, every expression of love filtered through the question, is this real or is this performance? And that's the damage. Not that Valentine's Day exists, but that it's colonized the concept of romantic love so thoroughly that authentic expression has become difficult. That spontaneous gestures of affection feel inadequate compared to the orchestrated performance expected on February 14th. That love has been given a script, a schedule, a price tag. But here's the thing. Love is still bigger than Valentine's Day, still wilder, still more mysterious. No matter how much corporations try to package it, standardize it, sell it back to us with a bow on top, they can't actually capture it, can't contain it. Love happens in moments they don't advertise, in gestures they don't sell products for. In the 1,000 tiny ways people show up for each other on random Tuesdays when nothing is expected and everything matters. Valentine's Day tells you love looks like roses and chocolate and dinner reservations, but actual love looks like your partner bringing you coffee in bed on a random morning, like remembering the specific way someone likes their tea, like showing up when things are hard, not just when things are Instagram-worthy, like laughing together at stupid jokes, like comfortable silence, like fighting fair, like choosing each other again and again in ways that have nothing to do with holidays or products or performances. That's what the Romans didn't know in their Lupercalia frenzy. That love, real, romantic, partnership love, isn't about fertility rituals or appeasing gods. It's about two people deciding they're better together than apart, and then doing the work to make that true. That's what the church didn't know when they tried to replace pagan festivals with saints' days. That you can't legislate emotion, can't baptize love into submission. It exists outside. Institutional control, messy and human and impossible to regulate. That's what Chaucer stumbled onto in his poem about birds choosing mates. That love is choice, not fate, not divine mandate, not biological imperative, choice. And choosing someone, being chosen, that matters. That's worth celebrating. That's what the Victorians commodified when they turned love into products. They weren't wrong that people wanted ways to express affection, but they mistook the tool for the thing itself. The card isn't the love, the card is just paper. The love is what makes you want to send it, and that's what modern corporations have forgotten in their rush to monetize every emotion. You can sell products related to love. You can create occasions for expressing love, but you can't actually sell love itself. It's not a commodity. Can't be manufactured, packaged, shipped, purchased. It just exists between people, in spite of everything working against it, in spite of corporations trying to define it, schedule it, profit from it. Love is the thing that survives when all the Valentine's Day decorations are packed away. When the chocolate is eaten and the flowers are wilted and the credit card bill arrives. When February 15th rolls around and life goes back to being ordinary. Love is what remains, what persists, what matters. And you already know this. If you're in love, you know it doesn't require a specific day. Doesn't need products or performances or public displays. It's quieter than that. Deeper, more persistent. It's there on boring Wednesdays and stressful Mondays and lazy Saturday mornings. It's in the everyday, not the exceptional. If you're not in love, you know love isn't something you can buy your way into. Can't purchase connection. Can't spend enough money to create intimacy where none exists. The products are decorations. Nice to have sometimes, but not the substance. And if you've lost love, you know its absence isn't about missing Valentine's Day. It's about missing the person, missing the specific, irreplaceable human you shared life with. No amount of chocolate or roses could fill that void, because the void isn't about things, it's about presence, connection, the other person being there. Valentine's Day can't give you any of that, can't create it, can't replace it, can't even adequately represent it. All Valentine's Day can do is provide an occasion, a marker, a moment where you might pause and acknowledge what's already there. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's enough. Not the whole multi-billion-dollar commercial circus, not the pressure and expectations and performative nonsense, but just the pause, the acknowledgement, taking a moment on a day that happens to be set aside for this purpose, to notice the person you love, to tell them, to show them, not because Hallmark says you have to, not because you'll be judged if you don't, but because you want to, because they matter, because in the middle of everything else that's happening, in the chaos and noise and endless demands of modern life, this person is worth stopping for. That's the version of Valentine's Day that might be worth keeping, the stripped-down, commercial-free, pressure-free version, where February 14th is just a reminder, a nudge, a chance to express something you hopefully express regularly anyway, but maybe with a little extra intention today. No roses required, no chocolate mandatory, no expensive dinners, no jewellery, no Instagram posts. Just you and the person you love, acknowledging that this connection, this choice to be together, is good, is worth protecting, is worth celebrating on this day or any day. Because love isn't a holiday, it's not a date on a calendar, it's the ordinary miracle of two people who could be anywhere, with anyone, choosing to be right here, together. And that's worth something. That's worth everything. The Romans whipping each other with goat strips didn't understand that. The Church, declaring saints' days, didn't understand that. Chaucer almost understood it, in his poem about birds choosing mates. The Victorians commercialised it without quite grasping it. And modern corporations definitely don't understand it, or they wouldn't keep trying to sell it. But you understand it. You know that love is in the choosing, the staying, the showing up, in the moments that matter because you make them matter, not because a calendar told you they should. So if you celebrate Valentine's Day, great. Send the card, give the chocolate, enjoy the ritual. But know what you're doing. You're participating in a commercial holiday with invented traditions and no real historical basis. You're part of a machine designed to extract money from emotion. And that's fine, as long as you remember, the machine isn't the love. The products aren't the feeling. The performance isn't the truth. The truth is quieter, simpler, more durable. The truth is that love happens outside the spotlight, beyond the reach of marketing campaigns, in spaces too small and too sacred for corporations to colonize. And the truth is that right now, wherever you are, whatever time it is, you're safe. You're here, breathing, alive. And whether you're alone or with someone, whether you love Valentine's Day or hate it, whether you're celebrating or ignoring it, you're okay. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of your body settling into whatever surface is beneath you. Notice your breath, how it moves in and out without you having to think about it. Feel the air on your skin, the temperature of the room, the sounds around you fading into background noise. You've travelled with me through 2,000 years. From Roman streets to medieval courts to Victorian parlours to modern shopping malls, you've seen how Valentine's Day was built, piece by piece, decision by decision. How something completely made up became so real that most people never question it. But now you know, you've seen behind the curtain. And maybe that changes things, maybe it doesn't. Either way, you have the full story now. You know where it came from, what it is, what it isn't. And knowing that, you can make your own choice about whether to participate, how to participate, what it means to you. You're not trapped by tradition, because the tradition isn't old enough to trap anyone. You're not bound by ritual, because the ritual was invented for profit. You're free to celebrate or not, to create your own version or reject the whole thing, to love in your own way, on your own terms, in your own time. That's the gift of knowing the history. Not cynicism, though there's plenty to be cynical about, but freedom. The freedom that comes from understanding that the rules were always negotiable, that the emperor has no clothes, that the machine only has power if you give it power. Love existed before Valentine's Day. Love will exist after Valentine's Day. Love is happening right now everywhere in ways that have nothing to do with hearts and flowers and price tags. It's messy and complicated and difficult and beautiful and absolutely worth it. And you're part of that. Whether you're in love now, or have been, or will be, or are learning to love yourself, you're part of the great human project of figuring out how to connect, how to care, how to choose someone and be chosen. And that project doesn't need Hallmark's approval, doesn't need Cadbury's chocolate or FTD's roses or De Beers diamonds. It just needs you, your attention, your intention, your willingness to show up, to try, to keep choosing even when it's hard. That's enough. That's always been enough. Close your eyes now, if they're not closed already. Feel yourself sinking deeper into rest. Your breathing naturally slowing, muscles releasing tension you didn't know you were holding. The story is finished. The history is told. You followed it all the way through, from blood sacrifice to greeting cards, and now you can let it go. Let your mind drift. Let the details fade. You don't need to remember all of it. Just the feeling, the understanding, the knowledge that so much of what we think is fixed is actually fluid, that traditions are invented, that the machine only runs because we keep feeding it. That love is real, but Valentine's Day is optional. Sleep is close now. You can feel it at the edges. That soft darkness, that quiet space where thoughts dissolve and consciousness fades, where nothing is required of you, where you're just here, breathing, being, existing without performance or expectation. You're safe, you're warm, you're exactly where you need to be. And love, real love, the kind that matters, is all around you. In the people who care about you, in the small kindnesses you've given and received, in the choices you make every day to show up, to try, to keep going. That's the love that counts. Not the love performed on February 14th, but the love lived on every other day. The love that doesn't need a holiday, doesn't need products, doesn't need proof. The love that just is. Breathe that in, feel it, know it, and then let it carry you into sleep. The story is over. The journey is complete. You've seen how Valentine's Day became what it is, and now you can rest, can drift, can let go. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, feel the quiet, feel the peace, feel the love that exists beyond commerce, beyond performance, beyond everything we've talked about tonight. It's there, it's real, it's yours. Sleep now, dream well, and wake tomorrow knowing that love is bigger than any holiday could ever contain. Good night.